basically what Jamy and I are just about to do is supposed to be going live into the Facebook group for everybody, an Ecstatic Living Facebook group, and we're having some tech issues. So instead of us going live, we're doing a pre-record of this, and I'm going to be popping the replay into the group. So that's what you'll be seeing. But still, please do chat along, engage along, comment. We'll be checking the comments later. So please just join us as if you're here with us live, and we will be chatting as if we're there with you live, and we'll just pretend that we can switch timelines. Basically, that's where we're at right now. So I'm sure most of you in this group, or not most of you, but a lot of you would already know Jamy. She's joined me in this group at different times throughout the years. And so we're going to have a chat about womb alchemy, which used to be called womb spiral, and also about parenting, which is really one of the areas that I have a lot of admiration for Jamy for. And she talks about it a lot all over her socials. So hi, Jamy. Thanks for coming to hang out.
Yeah. Gladly.
Thanks for your patience with all of the tech issues that that's all right. We had fun.
Yes. It's a good laugh.
So remind me, I think it's 7 years ago, your first experience of womb alchemy, which used to be called womb spiral, I believe was in a retreat in Salt Lake City. Is that right? Is that the first time?
Probably. Has it been that long?
It's a long time. I think so.
I'm not good with time. So
me either. One day,
some
a long time ago.
Yes. But I do think the retreat, was the first, because it was after my, my training in Byron.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you came to the States. And so that would have been my introduction to the world of womb alchemy.
Amazing. Do you know, I still have such clear visions. I think we even have a photo of one of our moments in that retreat, and I have such a clear vision of it. I think sitting right in front of you and giving you just a transmission and a real womb transmission. So I've got a womb alchemy retreat coming up in Bali in November. I'm so excited. I'm so incredibly excited for it. So I would love if you can share a little bit about first of all, what was your experience of the retreat as itself? And then I'd love to talk to you more about womb alchemy, because you've gone quite deep in that.
I have. So the retreat was, I think when I think back to that retreat, the primary thing that really comes to the surface is probably one of the first times that I felt like I was safe in a group of women. There's, I think that in almost any woman's experience, that there's a lot of sisterhood wounds, there's a lot of mother wounds, there's a lot of just dynamics with other women that we've experienced, and that was the first time that I just really felt safe to be me, to be fully expressed. I watched other women fully express and be welcomed and held in that. I stripped down naked and stood in front of all of you and got loved on, which was life-changing in a lot of ways. But I think that to be in a container that's held really safely with other women who are also in that place to be self-responsible and self-reflective is such a deeply healing experience that I think everybody should have an opportunity to have. It helped me remember that us kind of infighting, being against each other and backbiting and stuff like that, that's actually our natural state. That our natural state is in community and support with each other. And I think that was the first time it really clicked for me, this is how we're supposed to exist as women in community. So beautiful.
Yeah. Wow. I literally have goosebumps from that piece of your share, because for me, one of the intentions around doing these retreats is to create safe space for women to explore what I believe real sisterhood has the capacity to be, that unfortunately not many of us are experiencing in our everyday realities, in our everyday lives. Unfortunately, most women are experiencing probably the extreme opposite, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that was my reality prior to that, is really longing for it. But I think it's unique to call in a group of women who are devoted to really staying at that table and, following that agreement and not kind of getting pulled back into whatever dynamics are the norm. So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And what, like, from that retreat, what did you start to notice shifting in your own life? Like when you went back to life, like you have a husband and children and, like a
Yeah.
life that you live, what is something that you noticed that had changed?
Oh goodness, everything. I mean, like, is the first answer. Everything. Like, I think really kind of it's almost like the seat of me changed, so where I was operating from shifted deeper into myself and my womb and my center. But the way that I related to my kids, the way that I related to my husband, the level of pleasure and orgasm that I could experience changed and has just continued to change. Feeling safe in my body. And something else that I'm actually realizing now is my connection to the planet and to the earth radically shifted. When I became more connected to my own body, I recognized the microcosm that I am to the planet, and it's radically shifted then the way that I, navigate as a being on this amazing, being of a planet. I take care of myself and the things that I do to impact her differently as well.
Wow. Wow, that's amazing. I didn't know that piece. That's very cool. Very cool. And what did your husband and children notice a shift in you when you came back as well?
Yeah. I don't know if my husband ever actually did send you a thank you, but I know that happens often.
It does. It does. Yeah.
um, but yeah, I think when you liberate your own pleasure, your own connection to your body and what can flow through you, it has no choice but to positively impact the people closest to you. Yes, like our intimacy has changed 100 times over. And my kids, actually, I had a conversation with them when I came back because there was this deep recognition of what I'd been doing up to that point really was rooted in my own conditioning and trigger and fear and a lot of those things that kind of got alchemized through the process of womb alchemy. And as a mother, those ties extend. I have 2 daughters. And so those things extend into our kids and the way we relate to them functionally, but energetically as well. And I felt like I could actually be more honest and vulnerable with them in the communication. Like what used to be kind of a bit defensive and guarded, even with my own kids, recognizing kind of this layer that dissolved. And like, I actually really wanted to just deeply connect with them, and they felt it. It was like, I actually trust what you're saying in this moment. Like it feels different. And they not always and not immediately, but they started to meet me in that depth and that different dynamic that we were operating in. So yeah, it's really beautiful, to look back and recognize how much trigger and how much tension existed in our dynamics before, and how it really opened a pathway to me being in my center and me being deeply seated in my own, my own womb, and my own power allowed me to operate differently with my kids and my husband. Yeah.
Wow, that's so incredibly powerful. So I obviously know, and some people in here might know, that then you continued on to become a practitioner. So
Yeah.
you've gone really, really deep in this work. And I know that you have held quite a few women as well through this work. And so for me, I guess I would like to then flip the tables on what it is that you witness in your clients and in other women.
Mm,
For me.
yeah. I mean, when I experienced what I did, it was like, I want every woman on the planet to experience this magic. Like, it will change the world. It's like, I know that when women are grounded and well resourced and connected to themselves, that ripples into everything around them, and that our planet, it thrives. And so it was kind of a no-brainer. Like, I think even before I went to the retreat, I was like, and how do I become a practitioner, and how do I support this work in the world? And gosh, I mean, it's hard to like summarize what I see in women when they go through this, but I think my favorite thing is like watching the process of a woman coming back to this, like, I know who the fuck I am in this world, that whether they never knew that or they'd forgotten, and not in this lifetime, even like in the world, who I am. And it just is magical to watch a woman come back to that. And I mean, like with any work that we do, it's not a magic pill. Like, sometimes that I know who the fuck I am can send ripples of change that can be disruptive or scary or overwhelming, whatever. But like, when we're navigating that, I watch women recognize, and I've got this because I know who I am, so it changes the whole story. It changes the whole paradigm. Yeah, I love nothing more than watching a woman who's kind of been lost in herself and lost in, in her life. Like, who am I? What am I doing here? What is my purpose? Come back to like, I know who the fuck I am right here and right now. And I want to see more of that in, women in the world in general. So it's magical. Yeah.
What do you perceive is the shift that is possible, like, for rippling out into the world when women are coming back to themselves?
I see this a lot. I mean, because I talk about relationships a lot in my work too, and it's relationships to our partners or our kids. But when we get connected to our life force, when like the deepest, most alive part of us, that's what we are establishing almost as our frequency in all the things that we do. So we're no longer kind of numb, disconnected, like robots just kind of trudging along, numb and disconnected, and we are alive. Like, it's like we are life force grounded on the planet. And it forces all of the things around us to come to life. And I think that we become more authentic and more honest and more present. And, honestly, I think that's what's missing in the world. So many people just feel like, what's it all about? Like, what are we doing here? I get up, I go to work, I come home, it's numb. And I think that when we come alive, it's like we introduce the field around us to aliveness. And I personally, I know that any of us doing any of this kind of work, like it changes the kind of ground, the base frequency of the interactions that we have.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think that that's the foundation of any change work, because we're setting a new example. We're resonating differently in our own lives.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's interesting. I don't even know if you know, but this current retreat, I've called it "Create Your Fuck Yes Life" with Alchemy.
Yeah.
So exactly. And because for me, it's like so much more than womb work. It's like, yes, the foundation is the womb. Yes, that's where we're focusing on for the period of the retreat. But it's like this gateway in through the womb to impact every area.
Yeah.
Every area of life. I just got covered in goosebumps at the thought of that. And so, yeah, when you were saying like this aliveness, for me, I experienced that as like an ecstatic energy. So like, hence ecstatic living. And then when I sat with like ecstatic living, to me, it's like, well, that's the fuck yes life.
It is.
And creating your fuck yes life doesn't mean that every single day is like rah rah. It's just simply that it's like, it's alive.
Exactly.
Like
Yeah.
that's the thing for me, is even in the most challenging moments in our life, if we're in our center and we're alive, it's
Mhm.
just part of the journey and we don't get lost in this.
Exactly. And I think I just actually hopped off of a masterclass, but we were talking about how there are challenges with that pathway. But you pick your challenges because it is fucking painful to live numb and feeling trapped and disconnected and, like flat, right? Like I think that that's painful too. And
Yeah.
so even if there are challenges in this, they're mine, they're intentional. I'm choosing them and I'm creating them. And that's a different, I think, like even this whole idea of um, creation, like life force, the chaos. That's another thing that really changed for me, was like becoming really comfortable with chaos, with the unknown, with this awareness that that's where all creation, all new, all life comes from. And so instead of like trying to control it all and being scared of the unknown, it was like this softening into like welcoming, what gifts does this chaos have for me? And it's liberating to no longer be afraid of the unknown, but to actually be a little bit excited about what gets to emerge from it in any given moment.
Yeah.
It's a
But like,
wild ride.
it is a wild ride, and the illusion that we think that we have control over anything really just makes life, I think, so much more challenging.
It is.
And yeah, when we do tap into the womb and in this kind of feminine part of ourselves that come forward from that, we realize, I mean, you don't control birth, right? Like,
No,
well,
you
I
can
mean,
try,
I guess
but
you can. But really, I mean, that baby's coming when it wants to come and it's going to look how it wants to look. And you could have written your pretty birth plan and it's not going to look the same.
no.
And there's this state of the feminine, the woman's body that goes into this deep surrendered flow of like,
Yeah.
this is
Yeah.
life in me.
Life
And
is
I feel,
happening. Yeah.
yeah, like, it's happening no matter what. You
Right.
can't control it.
Yeah.
But when we're in our center, in that space of, like, I'm just part of life. I'm part of living. I'm
Right.
part of birth, and
And I'm
it's
getting
making
out of my own way, really. Like the control and the fear really is me getting in the way of life trying to take me on a journey.
yeah,
And the womb alchemy process it's like the beginning of that, the recognition that that safety exists within me, and I don't need to outsource that to something outside of myself to just surrender, because that's mine. I'm in control of that. Yeah.
yeah, amazing. So what, like, if there was a woman who was saying to you, like, "I don't know, I think maybe I'm interested in this retreat, but I'm not sure," what would you say?
um So from my own experience, I remember I actually knew nothing
Mhm,
about the process. I knew I just met you,
mhm,
but everything in me was like, I want to and I need to be a part of this. And I could easily go into my like, but how am I gonna make time to travel? How am I gonna pay for it? How am I gonna like? Is it going to be intense? Am I going to have to go through some things? Like all of that was outside of the driving force to like, this is something that I'm being called to. And I feel like this work works that way. Like it calls in the women that are aligned with this type of work. It is not a mental thing. It's not a logical process. It is a somatic process. And I would say to sit with yourself and connect to your body and yeah, ask for clarity, like, is this for me? But if you get a yes, to trust it, because for me, everything fell into place to make it work. And it was radically life changing in a lot of ways, personally, romantically, physically, emotionally, professionally, like in all arenas. I became clearer on who I am and what I want to do in the world. Um,
mm,
and yeah, I mean, I think that it's an experience that really is priceless in a lot of ways and is in deep service to not only you personally, but to your sphere of impact and the collective as a whole, for sure.
Amazing, thank you. And
Yeah.
you've actually seen, like, we've been to a different retreat together at the retreat center as well for Bali.
Oh,
So I don't know if you've got anything to say about the retreat center.
I mean, I just want to go back there just because it is so beautiful. This place is blissful, really. You know, like
Mm,
the surroundings, the people, the lodging, the food, the like I
mm,
mean, it is paradise, like no exaggeration of the word.
mm.
Um, I mean, honestly, I didn't know that's where it was when you were like, that's where we're going. I'm like, how do I make that work?
Yeah.
Like, how do I physically get back into that space? But also, you know, like the just the beauty and the synergy of women coming together for this type of work is so amazing. But yes, the destination, the place that you guys are going is like for me, it's like one of those once in a lifetime sort of places where like to
Mm,
experience the bliss of this paradise is, yeah, it's so good.
it
Like I
is.
could feel it in my body. Like when you said that's where it was like, oh my God, so yummy.
I know, I'm so excited. I'm
I'm so
really
jealous
excited
that
to get
that's where you're
back.
going because
Yeah,
uh,
yeah. Yeah, the land there is amazing. And so for this retreat, there's so myself facilitating, but also I have a team of 3 womb alchemy practitioners as well. So there's 4 of us.
wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really exciting. We're really this time going to spend a lot of time tailoring it to each particular woman. So we will go through
Uh,
womb alchemy together as a group. I'm getting covered in goosebumps right now. But also like every morning we'll be meeting and curating like what that woman wants for her experience. So she might go
yes,
and have one-on-one sessions with one of us, or she might want to go and spend the day in the spa because she's tired, or a day alone because that's what she needs, or maybe it's something going to a waterfall or exercising. Or so that part for me, I'm so excited to have
that's
this
beautiful.
team where we curate basically a one-on-one retreat experience for the price of a group.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I
I'm
think
excited.
that really lends itself though to getting in touch with what is true for you and what
Yeah,
you need in this moment. You know, it's like activating that I am instead of again kind of homogenizing to a group, but like really taking up a little bit of space and for women and moms to, yeah, come to that like this is for me and this is important in me landing what I need and want right now. That's really beautiful, Zapheria.
yeah, that was really the reason why we created that, is because I feel for a lot of women it's challenging to even know, like, what do I want? What do I
Yeah.
want in this moment? Like, even just
Who
how,
am I even? Right.
yeah,
Like,
even just like, what do you mean every day I get to choose what I want? Like, whoa.
yeah. Yes.
So
That's huge.
yeah, yeah, I'm very excited. I'm very excited. So I also wanted to talk to you about like parenting, because you parent and you school in a way that is different to what a lot of people do. And
Is.
I know that it's a big passion of yours. And obviously I've met your children and they are amazing, which
Thank you.
to me says a lot about the difference in the way that they're parented.
Yeah.
Because they're also, even when I met them, like it was a long time ago, so they were a lot younger, it was not like I was talking to children.
Mm-mm.
It was like I was talking to small adults. It's really, really intriguing to me. So I'm wondering if you can maybe share like a little bit about what's different in the way you parent and educate. Maybe let's start there.
Yeah, well, I mean, even tying it back to healing work, a lot of my healing journey was undoing what, you know, I was conditioned with as a child and like this kind of the way it should look and the way we should do things. And we're really taught to outsource to other people. So like even this like who am I or what do I want? Um, I didn't want my kids to have to come back to that. I wanted them to feel supported in discovering what that means to them in their developmental years and just in life in general, because it took me a lot to unlearn the opposite of that and then learn that. So if I could really allow them to learn that just as the standard, as the base of their experience, how, you know, how amazing would that be? um, and and give them a different place then to navigate life's challenges and the ups and the downs and all the things that life brings. from a place of this deeply connected, like I know who I am, or I feel safe to explore who I am.
Mm.
So that's really what drove it for me, is as I learned things, I'm like, why are we not teaching this to kids immediately? Like, it's so logical, it's like, it makes so much sense. And so I just started, I started applying that in my relationship with my kids and talking to them like they are unique souls on their own journey versus my child and a reflection of me that I need to mold and I need to teach and I need to, like, make them fit into the system.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just got really curious about who they were becoming and supporting them in that journey.
I can imagine that road has been full of beauty and maybe some challenges along the way.
Yeah.
So I'm intrigued, like what have been some of the challenges of really shifting this parenting paradigm?
Well, I mean, the one thing is that because I'm operating from what I was deeply conditioned as far as like the education system and the dynamics of parent to child, which is about respect and, like listening and following rules and all of this stuff, to encourage my children to question authority and to listen to their own inner, guidance, and to teach them that, like, we're never making mistakes, we're learning from our experiences, all these things. It's been challenging to then hold myself and to be with the things that brings up in me. And I really had this radical shift in awareness of, I used to think I was healing so that my kids didn't have to go through the same pain, the same challenges. And what's shifted for me is that actually I'm healing so that I can be alongside them as they experience their challenges and their pain. It's not so they don't have to, because there is so much richness and so much learning and gifts and wisdom in the challenges.
Mm.
I don't want to save them from those things, but I do want to be able to walk with them. And so many parents can't, because it brings up our own pain. It brings up our own fears. It brings up our own trauma. So we
Mm.
really try to, like, protect our kids from it because we can't feel what that brings up in us.
Yeah.
And so I actually, shifted this idea that I was healing to save them from it, but I'm actually shifting so I can be there alongside them and they know they're loved and they're not alone and they're safe. And, I've got their backs, like they're never going to be abandoned in whatever happens in their life. And I know that I can be there alongside them in their journey.
Mm.
And it's, I imagine what the world would be like if kids understood that I'm not alone, that I'm safe to explore and to navigate and to be my fullest self in the world.
Mm. Mhm. I mean, if that's going to be a generation of very different children, if we can start to encourage that it's okay to parent in a different way.
Yeah.
And, and I feel like for a lot of people, that's almost the piece, is like, it's okay to do it differently and to not do it exactly the same as the generation before, or as you read in the books, that maybe trusting your own deep intuition on how to parent is actually okay.
It is. Well, and even when you think about the fact that we're trying to apply these very, like, universal, generalized, and if we're being honest, it's not even rules, it's theories, right? Like, it's literally someone's theory on the way it works. And then
Mm.
we're trying to apply it to our individual, uniquely built soul of children in our care and ourselves.
Mm.
We're missing so much information, so much detail, so much capacity to support them in their individualized expression of God, of the universe, of life itself. It's like we've been taking that uniqueness and trying to homogenize it, trying to make it fit in, versus, hey, system, you can just fuck off for a minute here, and I'm going to let my child be the unique vibration, the unique wisdom, the unique genius, whatever these souls are bringing to the planet. I don't want to homogenize that out of them. I want to fully encourage it and let it grow.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, like, yum, like a world where there is space for everybody's unique expression versus, like, I don't know how I don't know how to deal with that. So I need you to change. I need you to like be more
Yeah.
normal versus, whoa, that's different. Let me be aware of what that's bringing up in me. And, you know, like it would just shift the paradigm of the way that we interact as human beings in general, let alone parent to child.
Absolutely. So what's like if there was a parent who would like to start maybe shifting into a different way, and obviously it's going to bring up their stuff,
Mm-hmm.
what kind of is there a tool or a tip that you could give to a parent on how to hold themselves through inevitably what's going to come up?
Yeah. So the thing for me, is like the first thing that I teach parents in the parenting paradox is the pause. Like just take a minute anytime that there's you can feel a growing tension, anytime you want to react, because that pause allows us a moment not to just react from conditioning, from our own fear, from whatever's moving in us, and gives us time to reconnect to what's important to us so that we can respond to the situation versus react
Mhm.
from an unconscious place. And so, you know, it's a lot of work and it's a lot of practice, because oftentimes that nervous system does its thing before our mind has even had a chance to recognize I am triggered and I am reacting right now. So if we can really practice and learn to just pause, momentarily slow down, and in the parenting paradox, we define something called your North Star. And so when you can come back to like, what is it? What have you guys collectively decided is important to be honoring in your family? And for us, it is like that self-awareness and that like I am the uniqueness of individuals. If I can pause long enough to come back to my North Star, how am I going to respond with that in mind? What am I encouraging here versus like, you need to stop because that's disrespectful or you didn't follow the rules or whatever. If I'm operating from, I want this individual to feel empowered to express themselves, how would I respond to this situation versus what I think they should be doing? So there is a lot, it's a lot of internal work. It's a lot of the capacity, even recognizing and being able to question this, it, because dogma exists at that level of like, this is real and true and this is the only way it works. And to be able to pause long enough to ask the question like, is this the only way that this can work? Like, are there, and yes there are, infinite other ways and reasons and stories that you can utilize. So
Mm,
anytime you feel like this is it, this is the only, that's never true. Like, ever. There are always infinite alternatives to whatever we've defined as our story. And, you know, it's really about reclaiming the space to write your own rules, your own stories. Doesn't mean you have to educate the way that I do. I unschool my kids. But a lot of women that I've worked with, their kids are in the school system. In fact, I just did a mastermind for Parenting Paradox about how to bring self-awareness and you know, like an empowered child to navigate, like how to be in the system without being a part of it. How do we
ooh,
teach our children this
amazing.
dynamic with authority and with being in the school system and still recognize the importance of their unique expression in that dynamic? So there's not just one way to do this, you know?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. What I mean, I feel like you're from what I know of your kids, they are also leading part of this with you. Like
Absolutely.
they're really and so what strategies and tools are they using? Like how do they know how to be able to bring to you and communicate, I guess, like their needs and how they would like it to be?
Yeah. I mean, I think that that's something that, for one, I model, and I've had to be like, that's one of the things I've really had to work on is that I need to allow them to ask for guidance or insight, because my teacher and my I'm the adult and my mentor and my coach is like, let me tell you what you should be doing, and got the whole like, you know, like fuck off, mom. Like I don't care. And I recognize that for me to hold myself, because part of it is allowing them to make their own mistakes. Part of it
Yeah.
is allowing them to gather data in their journey. And I needed to just sit back and trust their journey. And so part of it is me modeling what some of that looks like. And it's about communication. So like I've learned their unique designs. I've learned and am continuing to learn how they communicate, how they are best served, how they, like their environment, how they take in information, all of these different things. I think that that's our responsibility as the parent, to learn how to support our child. It is not the child's job to teach us who they are.
Yeah.
And so remaining in curiosity and keeping that communication open. And really it, for us as the parents, is creating a safe space for that and recognizing where our conditioning and our dogma probably isn't doing that. Like this whole, the classic one is like, you lied to me. And I always ask parents, like, what was going to happen if they were honest to you though? Like, why would they be with you? Because what would happen if they were honest with you? So like, we really do have to get honest with ourselves about what we're creating in the dynamic between us. I recently had a conversation with somebody and they were like, yeah, she's probably lying to you. And my other daughter, they were talking about my older daughter. My younger daughter is like, we have no reason to lie to my mom. Like,
wow.
That's, like, it was almost like bullshit, because maybe that's how it works in your family, but we have no reason to do that. And that was very intentional on my part, is that anytime truth was spoken, there was no consequence for that. It's like recognizing, if you don't do what I want you to, there will be punishment, is actually coercion. And we're teaching our children how to be coerced by authority versus like, what's happening for you right now and what's a healthier way to navigate whatever this is teaching them how to be resourceful as adults in the world. So we really have to get clear on what we're even trying to do as parents, and then act according to that thing we actually want to see in them.
Yeah, I mean, that's a massive change of programming, because, I mean, really, as a society, we're all programmed to do as we're told to do, to kind of like not really question authority very much, and like just like fall into line, really. It's like, don't do it too differently for so many reasons. So that's a huge shifting in programming that you're creating there.
It is. And it's a huge journey for everybody involved. Like even my parents and my sisters, like, my conditioning says they should not be speaking that way. But also, I wish I could have had the freedom to speak that way when I was, like, and that's why I call it the parenting paradox, because it is not black and white. All of these things coexist simultaneously. And we really need to expand to be able to recognize it's all true. And what do we want to choose to create in this moment, and not just kind of fall limp to whatever the way it's always been done.
What's like, as I can almost feel it. I can almost like feel other parents being like, but what about the safety thing? So like, how do you know when or how to step in if you think like, well, they're making a decision that could really put their safety at risk, but obviously not wanting to step in and be like, I'm the parent, this is how it's done.
Yeah.
How do you manage that?
Well, so I think that there's age appropriate. There's differences depending on how old your kids are. I have a 19-year-old and a 13-year-old now. So these safety things, they've really learned themselves. But part of that is that when they were younger, I let them climb the tree that they could possibly fall out of. And they learned the capacity of their body differently than maybe a parent that's like, oh, you could get hurt. There's something really, there's a lot of wisdom in learning those things, and again, that's us being able to hold, what if my kid does get hurt? What if my kid does break their arm? It's weird what the mind does with that, like it immediately goes to like permanent, disfiguration and potential death. And it's like, we break bones all the time and we heal and we're resilient. And I'm not saying like free for all, let your kids run in the road. This is the thing. People are like, if you are not in control of your kids, they're going to run in the road. And I'm like, those aren't the only two options. Like, what? It's really weird how the mind does that though. Like that is the first question parents ask. It's like, what if your kid just wants to run in the road? I'm like, of course I'm going to protect the physical safety of my child. But that isn't from, if you run in the road, you're going to get hit by a car. It's like, hey, babe, so these cars are going really fast and they're probably not paying attention. I talk to them about the way that the conscious mind works and that they can only pay attention to so many things. They're probably on autopilot. They're not going to notice that something they weren't expecting ran into the road. So it is our responsibility to be aware of our surroundings. And so it's like I'm teaching the why behind the thing I'm asking them to do. And I often guide my kids by helping them understand how it's in service to them versus you need to do what I want. I help them understand why it's the best choice for them. And yes, I have, like grabbed my kid out of the way. Like I'm not saying don't guide, but we guide from we're doing this together versus I'm telling you how this is going to be. And our kids, because they are their own unique souls, like they want to learn, they want to be sovereign beings. I think just at like a universal level, we have a hunger to be here, to learn, to be alive. And so it's just a different way of teaching, and it is age appropriate. Like right now there would be different discussions, and I have actually navigated my kids, navigating some really painful things. And instead of like, oh my gosh, this is disaster, we failed, like you're never going to be the same, any of that stuff, it's like, what do we need to learn here? Like, what gift is this experience? What do we need to learn? Who are you on the other side of this? Like there's such a different way to respond to those things versus like this idea of failure and of like something's happened that can never be undone. It's like every day we do those things, and that means we're living. This is what we're here to do. And so like taking off this pressure that we have as parents, and then gets extended to our kids, that like you got to make the right choices every time because there's consequences. There's consequences for everything, and unless you die, there's lessons to be learned, and there's like growth to be experienced. And that's what it means to be human on this planet. So like even just reframing the story of what we're doing here is not about success or failure. It's about, what am I learning today? What data have I collected here? And what do I want to refine in my process to do better next time? So
yeah, I mean, it's the critical thinking, right? The critical thinking and like creating these open minds, which is opposite to what our traditional education system does. Even with the traditional education system, is like everything is, if you make a mistake, it's wrong.
Right.
You go and do your test and you failed, so you're bad and wrong. You tried this and you didn't get it right the first time, so it was bad. Instead of showing us like life is about, you're going to make mistakes. Like I don't know I've never met a single human who hasn't made some pretty big mistakes in their life. And if we've been traditionally educated, I think we then panic about the mistake that we made. And now I'm bad. There's something terrible about me, rather than, what do I learn? What did I learn from that mistake that I did?
And even as a parent, I really chose early on, I would rather my kids make these mistakes while they still have me to guide them and they're still under my protection and my oversight, versus like what happens a lot of times is this like, don't make any mistakes. And then they turn 18, they go to college, they go out into the world, and they're making all these mistakes when there are higher consequences for not being self-aware and not knowing yourself in that way. So I really did have to work on my own nervous system to let them make some of those mistakes, but I wanted those mistakes to be made in a place where they could be supported in learning and growing from it, versus them being bigger and longer consequences that could potentially have forever consequences. It's like there's lots of different ways that can play out. The other thing that I really think about in the school system is we're really taught, it's almost like deeply conditioned in us, that learning happens in school, versus this awareness that they are not correlated. Actually, that we as human beings, we are learning every breath we take, every moment we do anything, we have the potential to learn something. And so when we really start to look at even the education system, it's an education system. It's a system. They are learning specific things, specific subjects, and routine and bell systems and schedules. But even when they're outside of school, they're learning about all the things and who they are and how the world works and all of it. So it's like disconnecting this idea that education or learning, it has to happen in school. And this tendency to want to outsource to authority. Like somebody needs to put their stamp of approval on that I can do this thing. Like, is somebody gonna tell me that I'm ready to do the next thing? And I've known this in my like professional life. Is somebody gonna like authorize me to do the work that I want to do versus like God's put it on my heart to share this thing and I'm gonna do it? Is kind of the difference in the conditioning. Is I'm telling my kids, like, even if it's not right on, even if you got to learn and refine the process, like follow that pulse versus don't look outside for somebody else to tell you you've passed this grade, you've passed this subject, you've passed this whatever, according to some random standard of age and knowledge that's memorized, right? Like I'm so grateful that my kiddos have chosen not to. I understand that it's a necessity for a lot of families. And I think that this is all completely doable within the system if we let go of the idea that like they're a failure and they're causing problems and the people pleaser and all of this. It's like, support your kid in being alive and authentic and expressed even in their school journey.
Amazing. I love it. Just that piece, like in being alive.
Yeah. Right.
It's like not turning them into a robot, into creating them into these beings.
Stay present, stay here.
Oh, please, more of that. More. Just people in general who are alive. So I love that. It's interesting too with like education. So what my understanding is, the word education comes from, was it a juice? I think that's right, which actually means to draw out. Education is not, here's this information, memorize it. Education is like, how can I draw out of you the answers? That's what education is supposed to mean.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That.
Yeah. It's really
interesting. The education system.
So we're not kind of doing it in the way, the actual meaning of that word.
Interesting. And I even look at the history of the education system, and it was created for the Industrial Revolution and, like this need for workers. And it was built out of necessity for that, right? But that's not like, if you understand that, enter accordingly. But I think so many people are just so far disconnected from what it is as a system. It is not the end all be all of your child learning what they need to learn to be thriving human beings on this planet, but it's kind of what we've done to it. And it's great if those are the things that you want to learn and need to learn and your child's interested and they're thriving in that environment. Awesome. But I think it's so dogmatically connected to learning and success that like the thought of not doing it that way really creates a whole story of fear and failure. That's just it's not true. So when we can start to really ask like, what is going to be of service to my child, whether it's navigating the system differently or not at all, that's an important question to ask. Not like we need to beat it out of our kids to fit into the system, which is what happens a lot. And our kids are stressed and and then we're stressed, and it just really creates kind of a toxic and painful cycle. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, it's interesting because I was about to ask you a question in one direction, and actually I feel like the question sits in both directions, which was going to be like, what about for the women that then feel the sense of mom guilt, which I know is a very real thing. And I was going to say like the mom guilt for not kind of shifting into a different parenting way, but I think also there's probably the guilt for shifting parenting in a different way. What do you encourage women to do when they're having that experience of mom guilt?
I mean, so the guilt comes from, I often ask like, what am I feeling guilty for? And who taught me that whatever is real? Because like we're navigating life. This is the what is. Life is revealing itself to us. And guilt is often associated with I should have done it different or should do it different. Oftentimes that's connected to our own personal experience or something we've learned along the way. So I often ask like, whose voice even is it that is giving me the idea it should be different than what it is? Because oftentimes it's not mine. It's like a parent or a teacher or a TV show or, who knows where this random idea came from. but also it requires us to be really honest with ourselves and how we're showing up, because I've felt guilty for doing things that I did need to change the way I was doing it. I needed to make some hard decisions. I needed to be more self-responsible. I think too, a lot of times moms will create that guilt without actually communicating with their children. Oftentimes I was carrying guilt for things that my kids were like, that's not even on my radar. I don't even know what you're talking about. Like, that's not a problem for me. So just check, like, where is this guilt coming from? And oftentimes for me, it's like, is it really serving me to operate from this place? Because if it's not, and usually it's not, I mean, usually it does assist in like initiating some sort of shift or change. There's that gift in it. But then what am I willing to do here? What do I need to do here? What is my North Star? Because depending on what that is for you and your family, are you going to be devoted or honor the integrity to that choice that you guys have co-created together? And both directions carry challenges and gifts and hardships. And I think for me, it's really just stepping out of like the dogmatic kind of robot-y thinking and allowing yourself to space to ask some questions on, how do we create a situation where we're all being served, and then being unattached from what the answer is, because oftentimes it's like we create the whole conversation from the question to the answer before we ever let it, like actually address the question or the answer or the potential options or the people involved, right? I know a friend of mine is like, she would have all the way through, like, I want this, but then I'll ask, and then he'll say this, and then this will happen. And so then she just doesn't even ask. And I'm like, you haven't even given that other person the opportunity to be a part of that conversation. Like, our minds are really good at that. And so coming back into like, what is life showing me right now, aside from how I'm interpreting it, what my story is about it, just what are the facts? What is life showing me right now? And that question is going to be different for everybody involved. And ultimately, like, that's the important thing, is that we stop operating from some universalized set of rules and being able to be present with life and with the now of our kids and making those choices and those actions, and not basing them on what it should be, what it was before, whatever these imaginary stories that our minds created, and just actually coming into the realness of life here and now.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Amazing. I love it. I love it. I love it. So my last question is, well, no, actually I have two questions. My second last question is, what is the biggest lesson that your children have taught you?
The first thing that comes up is, I am not in control. I'm not, like, no matter how much I try. I learned this in the womb spiral. Like, life is always trying to teach us that you are not in control. Like, you're in a vehicle and you're a passenger in that vehicle, but life is happening, and the passenger will try to tell you that you should have turned there and you should have whatever, but like, you can't rewind time and do that. You're here now. Life is happening. How do you work with life? And that's when my kids have, like, above anything else, is I am not in control. I have to surrender to the process, to trust what we're co-creating, and that they are, it's like they are equal co-creators in this thing. I'm not creating for them. I am not creating them. We are co-creating. And I think the sooner parents recognize that and invite them to consciously be a part of that co-creation, it radically shifts the dynamics as a whole.
Yeah. Oof, amazing. My final question is, like, how can people find you? If people are like, I want to hear more of this conversation, I know you share a fair bit on your socials. Is that the best way to find you?
Yeah, currently, I actually just talked to a VA today. Like, I'm making this all real and official. So there will be more, but the Parenting Paradox does have an Instagram page that I'm starting to kind of push out. I did separate that because I do a lot of different work. I do a lot of relationship work. I do a lot of like pleasure and sensuality. And I didn't want those pieces to alienate parents who really just want parenting advice. So, you know, they're all interwoven. And I believe that the mother and the woman that stands at the center of all that, like it's our duty to do the work to meet all of these parts of life. And womb alchemy is, you know, a huge tool in creating the environment for that. But parenting paradox, if that's all that you want, is separate. And then the I am Jamy Miranda is kind of all the things that are happening in life. I share, you know, the family stuff. I share the relationship stuff. I share the sexy selfies and like, you know, the whole picture. So I try not to compartmentalize too much there, but the idea that I could be in service to kids whose parents maybe weren't ready for all of the other stuff that I do really, like initiated that little level of separation for the parenting stuff. So
I love it.
Yeah.
I love that. Obviously, I love your full expression, and I can also understand that for some people, they just might not be ready yet. They might not be there yet. And so
sometimes that will actually lead them to this other stuff. But however they get there, that's none of my business.
All perfect. Well, I'll definitely share those links below this as well. But thank you so much for your time. Like I adore you. You know that I adore you on a personal level, but also like I really, really love witnessing what you're doing in the world. And you know, one of my biggest, highest values is the next generation and what they're here to bring and how they need different parenting and different support. So I really just like honor you so much for being brave and putting your voice out into the world and helping other women navigate this path as well.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
And we will definitely have to be in the same physical space soon because it has been way too long.
It has definitely been way too long. It's been way too long.
Yes.
Amazing. I'm going to end the recording part.